Top stories for the hour. Further efforts are needed to rehabilitate the ex-combatants in Ethiopia. And the death toll rises to 303 after 19 bodies were exhumed in Kenya. Hello and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Addis Nusar with the Nusam Biniam Gitana. Thank you for joining us and do stay tuned. Here now, the news in full. 6 months into its establishment at the beginning of this year, the National Rehabilitation Commission hobbles on with the challenge of huge cost for demobilization and reintegration program of ex-combatants. Appointed back in January as its commissioner after leaving his 4-year post as Ethiopian ambassador to China, Teshome Toga called upon international partners to lend a hand for the successful implementation of the program as well as to ensure lasting peace in Ethiopia. Goshu Maleso has compiled the full story.
The Council of Ministers decided to establish the commission because the DDR is an urgent and of course critically important aspect of the peace agreement between the federal government and the TPLF, and assigning this task to one existing institution may make it a bit difficult. The National Rehabilitation Commission has been conducting successive discussions with regional states and stakeholders to reintegrate and rehabilitate former combatants. National Rehabilitation Commissioner Teshome Toga, who spent some time with ETV special program, announced the huge cost of demobilization and reintegration program of ex-combatants is a bold challenge to commence the program.
We are emerging from war. We are emerging from conflict. We have several priorities, huge priorities. If you travel to the areas that have been affected by war, you have a lot of stories. I think DDR programs require huge resources. And the second one, for instance, was financed by a grant from the World Bank. It cost us about $175 million US. So resource mobilization is one of the key tasks that if you want to conduct a successful DDR, that you should do.
Teshome called international partners to continue their support for the successful implementation of the program as well as to ensure lasting peace in Ethiopia.
If you want to carry out a successful DDR, surely you need all the stakeholders to contribute, to participate. And the reason is very simple. Everybody has a stake in Ethiopia, everybody has a stake in peace. Because the ultimate goal of reintegration is ensuring lasting peace in Ethiopia. We don't just look at the ex-combatants themselves, but at the end of the day, what they would be contributing to lasting peace in Ethiopia. That is our goal.
The Commission has spent some time building institutional capacity, the first and an embryonic step. Having accomplished this, the Rehabilitation Commission has been grappling with collecting the necessary resources to deal with the Camber task of DDR. The ambassador stressed that strong political commitment is vital for the successful implementation of the program.
One of the critical factors for a successful DDR is again having a strong political commitment, having strong confidence among the parties, and most importantly, you need a conducive political and security environment. If that is not there, then definitely you will not be able to carry out your mandate.
The number of ex-combatants included in the Rehabilitation Commission program is about 250,000. Ethiopia needs $550 million to reintegrate them.
And another domain, State Minister for Finance Samerta Sawaso and the Netherlands Minister for Development Cooperation and Trade, Lesige Schermacher, visited the Livelihood Investment for Women Youth program, which is supported mainly by the Netherlands government, aiming to create employment opportunities for women and young people in Addis Ababa. During the visit, the State Minister highlighted the long-standing partnership of the two countries and expressed her gratitude for Netherlands government's ongoing development support through different platforms, including multilateral institutions and private sector. Moreover, she emphasized boosting the development cooperation between the two countries. Minister Lesage, on her part, appreciated the recent progress in the country after the peace deal and assured that Ethiopia remains one of the Netherlands' priority countries. She further confirms that Netherlands will continue to support the government of Ethiopia's development efforts both at the country as well as at the multilateral levels. As the news continues, the African Innovation and Digital Conference is being held in Ethiopia under the theme Digital Africa, and it is expected that there will be wide exchange of technology. Minister of Innovation and Technology Baleta Molla, senior government official from various African countries and representative from various international technology institutes are participating in the conference. According to the minister, following the national reform, Ethiopia has paid great attention to the innovation and technology sector. Let's take a look.
An inclusive and sustainable digital transformation is said to be vital to Africa's future. This was said at the opening of the 7th African Innovation and Digital Conference in Addis Ababa. The conference is organized by Extensia Limited that supports Africa's sustainable development of telecommunication and ICT. While opening the conference, the CEO of Extensia Limited said that Ethiopia's partial liberalization of the telecom sector will realize its potential to become Africa's digital capital.
Government of Ethiopia, and particularly His Excellency Minister Molla, have demonstrated time again they're playing their part by hosting this annual event here in this beautiful city of Addis Ababa. With the opening of a third MNO license, the potential partial liberalization of Ethio Telecom, and Safaricom securing huge investments from the international community to further accelerate their aggressive rollout plans, Ethiopia is living up to its promise of becoming a digital capital of Africa.
The International Telecommunication Unit, ITU, which stated that digital services were reached 40% by 2022, also revealed that accessibility, infrastructure and inclusion problems are challenges to the journey to a better digital transformation for the ever-increasing demand for digital connectivity in Africa.
In the past few years, we have seen an increased demand for digital connectivity and access to digital services. Between 2019 and 2021, internet use in Africa increased by 23%, and approximately 40% of the population was using the internet in 2022. Despite the increased demand, access to connectivity, reliable and robust digital infrastructure are among the major challenges faced to advance digital transformation in Africa.
The Ministry of Technology and Innovation has stated that there has been significant growth in the digital sector in Ethiopia in the last 3 years. The number of mobile users jumped over into 68 million from the previous 32 million in 2019. The minister also mentioned that the capacity of digital trading has grown significantly and that more than 1.3 trillion birr has been transacted, and he informed that Ethiopia's reform in the sector is achieving results.
As a result of this reform, which includes new strategies by Ethio Telecom, the telecom sector is thus growing rapidly. Access to mobile reaches to 68 million, which was around 32 million in 2019. Internet access surpassed 32 million, which was around 17 million 3 years back. The proliferation of fintechs, including digital payments such as Telebirr, CBE Birr, and other products, has already reached out to millions. For instance, Ethiopia's digital payment ecosystem has facilitated transfers of over 1.2 trillion birr in the past 9 months, which is an alarming increase of 169% compared to the past fiscal year.
After the partial liberalization of the telecom sector in Ethiopia, Safaricom, a telecom provider that started working in the sector, revealed that it is working extensively in infrastructure development and empowering the youth.
In line with our government's 2025 digital transformation vision, we are also implementing a very aggressive infrastructure development plan through 4G connectivity. This is critical because without infrastructure there cannot be connectivity. We are also aiming to ensure that the young people of our country here in Ethiopia, a country of 120 million people, but with overwhelming youth and dynamic, innovative youth, we can bring the right skills, the right tools, through many digital tools we have, to empower them with a view to contribute to the success of the Ethiopian digitalization drive.
In the 2 days Digital Africa Conference, it's expected that experience will be shared in the digital sector and countries will have the opportunity to work together.
We would like to encourage these values of the Harari to be registered, and that we help them technically, and also there is heritage authority.
I had to stay longer waiting until the hyena come from where they are.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, it's a beautiful experience.
Harar is a city of peace and a city of friendship and a UNESCO registered city.
First, I wondered if it was dangerous. I even Googled how many people have died.
With regard to tourism, Harare have a very, very big potential. It's a living museum.
As you can see, it's a little bit scary, but I really like the experience.
It feels great, especially for me, for my family, for my kids. It's an amazing experience.
So Muslim people, Christian people, they never get fights. So this city is one of the peace city and love city.
I'm feeding the hyenas and I'm not scared.
Welcome back. You're watching Addis News Hour. Step into another development. Ethiopia's climate resilient green economy strategy was highlighted at International Green Council conference held in London under the theme Achieving Food Security for Importers in Volatile World Markets. Deputy Head of Mission with the Ethiopian Embassy in London, Bayana Gebremeskel, highlighted the implementation of Ethiopia's CRG strategy and adaptation plan at the event. The Green Legacy Initiative enabled inter alia the planting over 25 billion seedlings in the first 4 years and the commencement of second round with the goal of planting 25 billion seedlings in the coming 4 years. Meanwhile, BASF Group and the Netherlands Development Organization have handed over high-quality onion seed to support smallholder farmers in conflict and drought-affected areas in Tigray and Amhara. BASF Group and Netherlands Development Organization (SNV) handed over the seed to the Ministry of Agriculture. It is stated that 15 million kilogram seed will be distributed to 4,400 farmers in Tigray and Amhara who participated in the Farmers Field School training established by SNV in cooperation with Ministry of Agriculture. The issue of regional blocs and financial integration is one of the core issues of this time the continent has to grapple with. In this respect, the implication of the finance sector in East Africa is very decisive. Ethiopia is hosting the 6th annual East African Finance Summit here in the African diplomatic capital, Addis Ababa. While the conference proceeds, I'm now joined by our staff reporter Sentayo Tamrat for the details on what's happening at Skylight Hotel, the venue where the annual event is taking place. Good day to you, Sentayo. Can you hear me? Hello, good morning, Sentayo. Can you hear me?
Well, thank you. And the 6th East African Finance Summit is just going on here in Addis, and a number of actors are engaging here, and there are just people from the policy sector, people from the banks, the insurance companies, telecom and technology providers, and so on. And there have been just senior government officials and CEOs of securities exchange, as the stock market, and also the finance sector in general. And from the Ethiopian finance sector, His Excellency Ahmed Shide has been just here providing some insights into the conference, and there have been just some presenters, paper presenters from the finance sector, and I'm joined here by Gamechu Aktola, Dr. Gamechu Aktola, who is the CEO of iCapital Africa Institute, and he will tell us more about the significance of this event, 6th African Finance Summit, and also he will tell us about the future of the finance sector of Africa. And thank you so much for joining me, Dr. Gamechu.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So would you just tell us what the event in general is about?
The event is, as you mentioned, it is the 6th East African Finance Summit. It has been happening for almost every year except COVID time. So on every year we had different topics that we brought forward for discussion by practitioners, policymakers, experts, researchers from across East Africa. In fact, we have a huge turnout this year as well. So this year also there are topics that we brought forward for discussion. And the overall theme is emerging frontiers in East Africa's finance sector. So under that, we have about 6 kind of sessions that we have identified, and each session has its own topics to cover. We have panelists, we have paper presenters from different countries, from Ethiopia as well, from Kenya, from Uganda, from Tanzania, from South Africa, from UK, who are going to share experiences and practices as well as opportunities that Ethiopia in particular and East Africa in general has in the finance sector. So there are many topics to be covered.
Okay. This is just a 6th summit, and you have just held some 5 summits. So what significance for policymakers has it brought?
Well, in fact, the whole idea of East Africa Finance Summit is creating a very concrete platform where different policy ideas, recommendations would come forward out of the conversation by key stakeholders, both operators, researchers, panel members, policymakers, and everybody will come to the table and have conversation on different issues. If you remember, we have discussed from first summit until the 5th one, we raised capital market, that particularly in Ethiopia, we said Ethiopia needs capital market, a functional capital market. So the other thing is we have also talked about Ethiopia needs to open up its finance sector, including banks and insurances as well. And we also talked about recognition of the fintech and other financial operators, service providers, and we also talked about the need for regional integration. And so generally there were many topics that were raised from year to year. When we started back in 2016, Ethiopia did not have a capital market, as you remember, and there was no talk as such about how whether Ethiopia is going to open up the banking sector for foreign investment. Was not also that strong conversation. Now we are on the 6th discussion. And so we don't talk about anymore about it, whether Ethiopia is going to open or not. That's not going to be a question. It's not whether Ethiopia needs a capital market or not. We already have a proclamation. We already have the policy direction. It's going to open up, and insurance is coming. And now the question is, so many things in the last few years, because of many reasons, that the transformation that the country is going through, because of the COVID-19 lessons we learned, because of global dynamisms, so many things have happened in the finance sector, even in Ethiopia. We believe that in the last few years, things that have happened for 10 years in other countries is happening within 2 years. So a lot of things are happening in this finance sector, you can imagine. So the question is now, is everybody ready for that? Because are we ready? Are we prepared? So the next is about liberal. So there are many issues we talk this year. So those are answered. We don't have to talk about them, but we have to move to the next step and say, now that you have a capital market, securities exchange platform, who is going to be listed? Are banks ready? Are insurances ready to raise their capital, to be listed? So many things. And to be active players in the ecosystem. Those are the questions that we'll talk about now. And in terms of opening up and liberalization and regional integration, the next step is Ethiopia has opened. How does capital market help that? And there are also delays in terms of, for example, offering service offerings from Ethiopia perspective for Continental Free Trade Agreement, for example. We have ratified it, but we haven't made the offer. The only country that did not do in East Africa. So why? And if it happens, then it's going to affect the finance sector one way or another. So are we prepared for that? What's going to happen? What's the direction? These are the things we'll talk, because continental integration of Africa is feasible phase by phase. First you go regional and then you move to the other one. So where are we in terms of step? And these are the things we talk. And the other thing is, we're going to talk about the global dynamism and the new world order. That's a big issue in the making right now, because whether we like it or not, we are a part of the global village, and what happens elsewhere is going to.
Okay, in line with this global dynamism, what's going to affect the African finance sector, and also the Ethiopian finance sector, which is going to be liberalized soon?
I'm going to tell you this. Now, look, let me simplify it. For example, we are in our international trade relationship and transactions, we are a part of, say, the global financial system. So, for example, we're using SWIFT. Okay, we also need correspondent banking, which are, most of them are Western origin kind of banks that we are using. For example, I'm giving an example. So whenever the global dynamism changes, look, the Ukraine and Russia war, there are economic sanctions that are happening, and there is supply chain disruptions and economic sanctions. All this comes with compliance requirements for the finance sector that we have to, whether we like it or not, we cannot choose, because we are under pressure. We're using this one-sided system, but there is a discussion about multipolar world, that there is no unilateralism and imposition from a particular group. And if you talk about BRICS, for example, there is a discussion about membership, and it's considered to be an alternative from existing financial system and the way things are working. These all dynamisms, Ethiopia cannot skip, and East Africa cannot skip. It's going to affect us. And so the question is, for example, dollarization issue. De-dollarization is a conversation. We can't avoid this conversation. Recently, there were questions about whether East Africa and the transaction between regions, why is it supposed to be dollar-based? That's a question raised. Exactly. There are another alternative continental bank, continental currency, regional trade, to just find alternative mechanisms that our financial sectors and countries can have some sort of liberty, freedom from imposition of the existing world order. Now we can't rule out discussing these things. Africa is a big market. It's about 2 billion market, and it's the future for the world. At the same time, it's about 2.5 trillion GDP that we're talking about. So now you can't avoid this economy, and every time countries are interested, the rest of the world is interested in what's happening in Africa. That means they are interested in our banking system, that's in our insurance system, in our technology, in our innovation, in the way we trade, who we trade with, everything. And so where is Ethiopia? What is our choice? What are we doing? Are we joining BRICS, or are we finding alternative financial systems? And, we have to talk about it. And regional and many other things in terms of financial inclusion. If you see, we're by far much less than 50% as we speak, and whereas you talk about more than 80% even in Kenya and others. So these are the things we have to talk and deliberate, and particularly we need to be ready, not from the policy and regulation perspective only, but from operation, from banks, insurances, financial institutions. Those are the things we talk.
Dr. Gamechu Aktola, CEO of iCapital Africa Institute, thank you so much for the explanations you have given us on the SIGS Africa Finance Summit, East Africa Finance Summit. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, dear viewers, this has been just the conversation with Dr. Gamechu, and we have just brought you a lot of issues regarding the SIGS African Finance Summit, and we talked. We will update you in our evening news hour about. We'll give you a consolidated updates on this issue.
Thank you, Santayo, and we really appreciate your efforts. And that was a live report from Skylight Hotel, where the main happening is taking place. Now we step to another news. Ethiopian ambassador In our business segment, Ethiopian Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary to the Republic of India, Demmek Atsnafu, met and discussed with Puneet Kundal, Joint Secretary of the East and Southern Africa Division. During the meeting, the Joint Secretary emphasized the ever-growing multifaceted relations of the two countries in the areas of trade and investment, education, capacity building, and among others. He states that India is keen to engage with Ethiopia based on mutual interest and to expand areas of engagement, including cooperation in the global arena. Atnafu expressed hopes that the bilateral ties will further enhance during his tenure in India. Furthermore, he promised to work closely with the ambassador for mutual benefit of the two countries. Likewise, Indonesia Ambassador to Ethiopia Al-Busra Bansur said Ethiopia and Indonesia are working to further strengthen their relationships in trade and investment sector. The ambassador told Ethiopian news agency that the two brotherly countries have been elevating their ties in various sectors. Apart from taking advantage of the opportunities in the economic sector, the ambassador said that new opportunities to strengthen the economies of the two countries are underway. Kasaun Chani has compiled the full story.
Ethiopia and Indonesia are seeking to further bolster their cooperation in commerce and business, according to Indonesian ambassador to Ethiopia. The ambassador told the Ethiopian news agency that the two brotherly nations have occasionally improved their diplomatic ties in various areas. The ambassador noted that besides seizing economic opportunities, other new opportunities are being generated to develop the economies of the two nations. I think that many Indonesian investors are heavily investing in the textile industry.
The bilateral relation and cooperation between our two countries, Indonesia and Ethiopia, increased significantly in all sectors. So now, especially in economy, if we are talking about the economic cooperation, such as garment, there are a number of Indonesian companies in Hawassa Industrial Park, and totally there are now 6 Indonesian companies are investing in Ethiopia. And I believe the number of this investment will be increased significantly in these coming years.
More than 79 investors from Ethiopia attended a trade bazaar hosted in Jakarta, Indonesia back in 2022. Recalling the event, Ambassador Banasro stressed how important it was as a first step towards developing economic ties between the two countries. Many Indonesian investors have been considering Ethiopia as a favorable investment destination. Banasro said that in Ethiopia's business climate has been ripe so much so that Indonesians with the equipment in pharmaceutical and food processing industries are now eyeing.
In the last 2 years, there were many Indonesian companies come to Ethiopia to seek the opportunities to invest, not only trading, but also invest in Ethiopia, mostly on the pharmaceutical companies and sectors, and also food and beverage.
Ethio-Indonesian ties go back to 1961. In 1964, Indonesia opened its embassy in Addis Ababa, located in the Vatican area of Nefas Silk City on Egypt trade.
And now a reminder of the top stories once again. Further efforts are needed to rehabilitate the ex-combatants in Ethiopia. And the death toll rises to 303 after 19 bodies were exhumed in Kenya. You've been watching Addis News Hour with Nusa Biniam. Thank you for staying with us. Goodbye and have a lovely time.